Hello, UK Crime Book Club. Representing Scotland tonight, we have Fulton Ross. Well, that's the weirdest opening I've ever had. I don't know where that came from. I'm too excited by the hedgehog. This is the thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
we'll tell everyone about the hedgehog in a minute. Would you like to show off the book and tell us a little bit about The Unforgiven Dead?
Yes, this is the book here, The Unforgiven Dead. This is a kind of, the cover went through various incarnations, so this is not going to be the actual cover. It's similar to it, but the new one's slightly cooler, if I may say so myself. So this book is, it's been described as Shetland meets M. Night Shyamalan. So, you know, it's got an American publisher, so a lot of people are familiar with M. Night Shyamalan across the States. So he's the guy who did, Sixth Sense and things like that. So it's kind of it's tart noir with a wee supernatural twist. It's set in the West Highlands, where I'm from. You might be able to tell I've got a very strong West Highlands accent. It's set in the West Highlands, and it follows the story of Angus Dew McNeil. Dew is Gaelic for black, so it's black.
I'm so glad you've said that, because I wasn't sure how to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's D-U-B-H, but you don't. Sorry, B-H is sort of silent. Yeah, so
it's Dew.
Yeah, Dew.
Okay, I'll remember that now.
There's not too much Gaelic in it for people who are listening. You're going, oh gosh, you're going to know it's Gaelic. I'm not going to understand any of it. I'm not a Gaelic speaker myself, so I had help during the novel, and there's Gaelic in it, but it's pretty much self-explanatory when you see it. So yeah,
it really is. Yeah.
Yeah, you know yourself. Yeah, it's kind of accessible, isn't it?
I think so. I think you can just kind of pick out the context from it, and occasionally there's a little description with it, so you might translate it as well in some places. Trying to think of examples of where you did. I know quite early on there was a scene. See, this is the thing, we have to pick earlier scenes because I don't want to give anything away. Yes. And there's so much depth and detail in this book, as I was saying before we went live. But there's a scene where Stout is being his irritating self, shall we say?
Yes.
He's a bit brusque. He's a bit kind of. It can be. He's not really bothered about offending people.
No, it's just Angus's boss. He's
yeah.
And Angus is a constable. Yeah.
So when Angus they've gone to deliver a message to a family, a death message, and they're chatting with the housekeeper, whose name Mrs.
McCrimmon.
McCrimmon, thank you. I knew it was an M.
Yeah.
I could think. And so they're kind of having a chat between them, and Stout's not happy about him speaking Gaelic.
That's right.
Keeps telling him to speak English, which really did the job of getting my back up.
Yes.
So if that was what you were hoping for, he really irked me.
Gaelic. So yeah, that was there's a theme there that I wanted to explore a little bit. This idea that Gaelic culture and Gaelic language in particular has been kind of looked down upon for centuries, really, and so that was definitely one of the themes of the book.
And it's done really beautifully. It wasn't confusing at all. Like I said, you could read the context and read between the lines. So that was really nice. And actually, it's really nice when you've got a book that's set somewhere so atmospheric and so beautiful and so wild, and then you have some of the language as well. I really love that, and I think you did it really well.
Yeah, it just adds a bit of texture, and a lot of the things that inspired this book, folk tales, they're from Gaelic culture. So there's a great book which I've got behind me here. It's massive. It's called The Gaelic Otherworld by John Gregson Campbell. I'm just going to show you this because it was really.
And I'm going to write it down while you show us.
Really kind of influential when I was researching this book. So here it is there. So it's called The Gaelic Otherworld: Superstitions of the Highlands and Islands of Scotland and Witchcraft and Second Sight in the Highlands and Islands. So they weren't one for snappy titles back in the day. This was actually. It was tales collected by John Gregson Campbell, who was a minister in Tiree, and he collected superstitions and customs and things during this tour of the Outer Hebrides and Inner Hebrides, the West Highlands, and I think it was the 1950s. And then they come out in various volumes around about 1900. And yeah, it's great because it's got he was a Gaelic speaker, so it's got the sort of the original Gaelic alongside the English. And yeah, it's just a great resource for writers to draw on. And it's just lovely that he's preserved it. You know, there's
Yeah.
2 or 3, or maybe more than that, there's probably 5 or 6 different folklorists around at this time who were doing something kind of similar. And it's just glad that they've actually managed to preserve a lot of this tradition, because, like I say, there was, for years, Gaelic culture was kind of looked down upon, and of course it was an oral tradition as well, so a lot of it wasn't written down.
Yeah.
So people like John Gerrickson Campbell and Alexander Carmichael, they all managed to record some of this for posterity, and for people like me to dig into and use as inspiration.
I was just going to say, did you use it for inspiration, or did you find a lot of it helped with the detail and getting the detail right as well?
It was mainly for inspiration. I mean, a lot of the tales are quite eerie. It was the eerie tales that kind of struck me. And I suppose, I mean, this isn't like, show you it's a massive book. Look how wide it is. A lot of the research into this book is the sort of the iceberg image, where it's only a tiny wee bit at the top that you see.
Yeah.
Loads more down below. And when I talk about, you know, the folklore and stuff like that, I'm always worried that people are thinking, well, is this a fantasy book he's written here? It's not a fantasy at all. It's just contemporary crime novel. It follows much of the same tropes as your normal sort of crime novel. You know, you've got I don't think it's given much away to say there's been a murder in the beginning.
I think you can get away with saying that, yeah.
But I suppose the thing that's a little bit different is that as the book progresses, there's parallel investigations. So you have the rational, if you like, investigation with the major investigation team, and set against this is the sort of supernatural investigation led by Angus's sort of father figure and mentor, Dr. Gillespie McMurdo, or Gills as we know him. So you've got these two sort of conflicting investigations. And hopefully, well, my plan was that if I was doing my job right, that by sort of halfway, readers would be going, so is this killer a who, as in someone of sort of flesh and blood, or is it a what, as in some sort of supernatural entity? So that was the kind of game I was hoping to play.
Well, job done.
Excellent. It works. Yes.
That's the thing. You're never really quite sure, and I like that. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of because obviously we're seeing. We should talk about his second sight.
Yeah, that's absolutely fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I was mentioning before we come on camera here that it's been a long time in the writing this book. So 2016, I think I started it. And one of the things that happened when it was picked up by Inkshares, that's my publisher, it won a contest in 2018. So Inkshares is a Californian publisher that really focuses on debut authors, and they run lots of competitions to sort of identify new talent. So they picked up in 2018, and I sort of naively thought that was it. I can sit back. That's it. Job done. They're going to publish it. But of course, it wasn't quite that straightforward. They wanted to really dig into the supernatural element and really draw that out. So we did that across, goodness knows how many drafts, maybe 8 sort of full drafts, maybe more than that. And yeah, Angus's second sight was that was the first thing that we honed in on. We thought, right, how can we really develop this and make it seem really grounded? Like it can't be hokey. You can't have him like lying back and, you know, going into some sort of trance. We wanted to make it really grounded, so that it felt really real, you know. Well, this book was handy in that. There's lots of books in Second Sight actually, which I kind of I dug into a bit more. And it's really interesting, Second Sight as a subject. I mean, I'm a bit of a cynic, or I wouldn't say cynic, but I'm a historian, so I kind of look at the source evidence and so that and try. But when it comes to Second Sight, there's so many accounts, and you think, well, why would these people be lying about this sort of ability? So no, I'm still sort of almost sitting in the fence a little bit about Second Sight in general, but in this book, I'm really leaning into the idea that Second Sight is something that is something real, but not something magic. It's not magic. It's like a remnant of, I think in the book I say it's a remnant of Druidic lore that's been sort of hardwired into the DNA of certain people. And again, that's going back that's going back to sort of pagan times where the Druids sort of held sway, and they had, perhaps had a better understanding of nature. And this is kind of the idea that second sight is something that we've lost, or some people still have it, sort of a vague remnant of it. So that was kind of the idea that I'm trying to get across.
And I think everyone can say, whether you agree with second sight or not, and I'd be with you, I'd want evidence. But there do seem to be some people who have more intuition, maybe have more. We can all say we've had a feeling of something bad's going to happen, or something's made us uncomfortable, or, just kind of one of those feelings where you just have to go along with it, maybe to get out of somewhere, something doesn't feel right, or, something.
Absolutely.
Or kind of, somebody who might know that somebody's ill and nobody's believing them, and they go in because they just have this feeling that something's not right. So I think even if you don't agree with it, it can still resonate with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's amazing how many people I spoke to when I was writing this. And I mentioned there's a sort of supernatural element, and almost everyone's like, I don't believe in ghosts. They always start with, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in supernatural. And then they'll come
and then they say, but, and tell you their example.
So I was in, and I was definitely on it. So I think people people want to believe in supernatural a wee bit. They want to be scared. They want to think that there's something out there other than just, boring old life, boring old rational life. So yeah.
Sarah, we've got some hellos. Somebody's learning Gaelic. Who's that?
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, Sarah. So Sarah, Laura, and Leslie have all said hello. And Sarah also wants to know, are you a planner or a pantser? I mean, you've obviously had to do lots and lots of work and rewrites, and this is why the book is so insanely good.
Yeah.
You can see the work that's got. It doesn't feel like work's gone into it when you're reading it. It feels very natural and very much you settled down for this story that somebody's telling you.
Yeah.
And you're kind of watching it all unfold and learning so many things. But when you were in the earlier stages, did you plan things out, or were you just kind of going with what felt like?
It was a progression from being a pantser into more of a planner, basically. the first incarnation of the book, the one that was picked up by Inkshares, that wasn't planned. Then I started working with Inkshares, and I started planning out a lot more, or outlining, as we like to call it. So a lot of outlining went on from 2018 onwards. I think planning's your friend now. I'm working on the follow-up to this book. It's called The Archer's Ghost. It's actually set in Barra, the Outer Hebrides. Much more planning before I started writing anything, or outlining before I started writing anything. I was at I think it was Bloody Scotland last year, and Christopher Brookmeyer was talking about his sort of process, and he writes with his wife, as Ambrose Parry. One of his books is behind me, actually.
Yeah, with Marissa.
Brilliant. And Marissa was very much the planner. And one of the things that they were talking about, I think it was actually, they were talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer and how they write episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and they talk about having sort of tent posts throughout the series. So there's certain incidents that you have to work towards. So I found that quite helpful. So if you've got a big set piece, that's going to come at this point, and we're going to try and work my way to this point. So yeah, I think I don't plan to the nth degree, but yeah, definitely do a lot more planning. And the great thing about planning is you don't have that horrible cold sweat when you sit down and go, oh my God, I don't know what I'm writing here. I don't know where I'm going. So yeah, planning helps that way.
There's a really nice foreword in this. Foreword, is it like a note from you to the reader? I don't know, is it in the main copy, or is it just in the proof copies?
It might be. Oh yeah, the Dear Advanced Reader, but yes.
Yes.
Yeah. What that was? Oh yes. Yeah, but I think this is just in the Advanced Reader copies.
Well, it's brilliant, and I wrote down a line from it that you've quoted as Val McDermid saying, "Some people feared Scottish crime fiction would soon run out of steam, that tartan noir would be a passing phase," and I can't ever see that being true. There is so much to explore on so many levels. There's so much history. There's so much passion and love for the country. And then there's so many different areas, and people are really proud of Scotland,
Oh
as
yes,
they quite rightly.
yeah. I mean, Scottish crime fiction has just gone from strength to strength. I think I studied Scottish literature at university in Glasgow, early 2000s. When I was there.
Mm.
So you had this kind of canon of Scottish literature. It was everything from, the medieval Mackers all the way through Robert Louis Stevenson and Walter Scott and things. But there was a surprising lack of any sort of crime writers that were sort of treated seriously. But when I was reading for fun at that time, I would be reading Val McDermid, I'd be reading Ian Rankin, Christopher Brookmeyer, Denise Mina. So they are kind of my reference points for crime writings. That's where, I mean, a lot of people will say, we'll go back to people like, I don't know, the American hard-boiled sort of fiction of the 30s and stuff like that. But no, I'm very much, my references are almost all sort of Scottish crime writers around about that time, and just Scottish writers in general. But since then, I mean, Rankin and McDermott all sort of forged the way. But since then, there's just been an explosion of great Scottish writers. And we'll all be coming together in Stirling in September for Bloody Scotland, so that's going to be a lot of fun, I think. And the good thing about Tartan Noir is some people don't really like the label Tartan Noir. I think it's a bit too kind of imprecise, but what I do like about it is it's kind of a broad church. It's
It's like an umbrella point, isn't it? Things come off that.
Absolutely. There's so many different voices. You've got your kind of something like Alexander McCall Smith, who'd be a Tartan Noir, all the way through to maybe even, I don't know, Urban Welsh. So, you're very differing sort of styles and tones and voices. So I don't mind that at all.
Laura said the descriptions of supernatural scenes in the blurb on Amazon were making her think PTSD initially. I suppose in some ways there could be some similarities.
That's actually a really good point. Funny enough, we're developing this for TV at one point. I've actually developed it for TV. I've written a pilot and I've written an outline for the whole series of 6 parts. And that was one of the things we were kind of talking about. Is Angus suffering from PTSD, or is this actual a sort of supernatural thing? So there's a tension there. So that's a really good point. And we're actually trying to draw that out in the series. It's almost a way of talking about mental illness. And actually, Angus, for a good part of the novel, is conflicted himself. He doesn't know whether his father's a kind of very much an atheist and a cynic, and he's told him. He actually has dementia, so we don't actually get to hear Angus's father, but we hear him in sort of flashbacks.
Yeah.
And he's told him throughout his childhood that you don't have second sight. You've got some sort of trauma here, and he's told him to take the pills, speak to the psychologist.
Yeah, and he does kind of hear his dad's voice in his head, doesn't he?
Lots,
saying,
yeah.
Right, pills, come on, have your pills. You're fine, lad. Sort of, it's so it is interesting that we don't get to see that full relationship. It doesn't need it though, because the whole point of this is it's Angus working his way through things. So we don't really need more than the kind of the bits that you've dripped in. We don't need this kind of big blown up discussion. We just need Angus to be kind of comfortable in his own skin.
It was handy having his dad there as well, because both him and Gills, who was his dad's good friend, they go to visit him in the care home quite a lot, and he's almost a sounding board for both of them. You can sort of talk to him, and Gills kind of imagines the response that Euston, that's Angus's father, what he would be saying in response to his sort of questions. So it's a good device because it avoids sort of exposition as well. You can sort of, if there's anything you need to sort of get out there, you can get out.
You are keeping driving it forward with the conversations.
Exactly, yeah. So,
Leslie said she came across a woman who was absolutely convinced she's going to die having routine surgery. I saw her the day after her surgery saying she was okay. Oh, the day after she died suddenly. I know everyone has worries in the back of her mind, but she was so sure. That's really sad.
That is sad.
I'd not seen the end of the comment before I started reading, but that's really sad.
It is, but yeah, I mean, is that sort of? I suppose that comes back to that sort of instinct we were talking about. Sometimes I mean, I often think a lot of these instincts are developed sort of back back before, you know, technology and things like that, when we weren't exactly the top of the food chain, and a lot of it was sort of hardwired into us then, because we were looking over our shoulder,
Yeah,
scared we
you've
were,
got to trust your gut.
you know, by like a saber-tooth
Yeah.
tiger or a hedgehog. You never know.
So before I before we came on camera, I've not seen a hedgehog for years, so I'm really excited. There was a hedgehog in my garden, quite happily, just kind of having a little scratch in the sun, literally on his side. Yeah, and my husband named the hedgehog Barry, and I said you can't because it needs to be a H if it's a hedgehog. So there is a hedgehog of unspecified gender wandering around called Hercules. Not like we'll be able to tell Hercules from any of the other hedgehogs, but if we've only got the one, maybe we can assume.
No, I think you'll have to maybe get him a wee hat or something, or some shoes.
I don't need any encouragement. So Sarah was born of Scottish parents and proud to be Scottish. So Sarah, how's learning Gaelic going? Which I now know how to pronounce. Now I've heard you say it. This is the thing. There's so many words that I know I pronounce wrong, but I think I know how to spell them all, which is a good start.
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't matter. It just shows that you've picked them up during reading, and then we try and learn pronunciation as we go. But yeah, I often come out with things very, very wrong to how they're supposed to be pronounced.
It's tricky. I mean, there's a website called Duolingo. I think it's called Duolingo. That I'm going to
Yeah,
really dig into soon. Yeah, the pronunciation in Gaelic's tricky. There's lots of, it seems to be, there's lots of consonants that shouldn't be there. But I think once you learn the system, it's not too bad. A lot of people, they kind of scoff at Gaelic and go, "Oh my goodness!" It's similar with Welsh. Like, people look at Welsh words and go, "Oh my goodness, what are all these words for?" But if you know the system, then
yeah.
you can pronounce it. You know. So yeah, I need to start learning it. But it's one of these things. When you're writing a book, you kind of think, I need to be an expert in absolutely everything, but you don't. You have to kind of almost fake it till you make it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, because you just don't have time to, you know, if I've got a fireman who's a character, I can't go and spend 2 weeks being a fireman for and work experience or whatever. So you've got to kind of bake it a little bit. But yeah, Gaelic's definitely one that I'm going to be learning in the next year. Hopefully by this time next year I'll be able to have a conversation.
Well, Sarah says, I asked how it was going. Sarah says, not too well. I wonder, is it pronunciation? Is it time to put into it? I'm intrigued now. I did start learning a language, and it's so hard to kind of put the time into your day when you're already busy. You just don't know where to slot things in.
Yeah, yeah.
It is a tricky thing. What other aspects have you found you've worked on more since you've been? So you submitted your first draft, and obviously there's been back and forth and several iterations of it. What did you find you really had to focus on? What we're trying to glean advice for any wannabes that are watching, basically.
A lot of it was really digging down into your characters, getting to know your characters really well. Unforgiven Dead's told from 4 POVs. So Angus is the main POV. He's maybe 75%, I think.
Yeah.
Then you've got Gills, so you've got chapters from Gills' point of view.
So you say Gills, and I automatically smile.
That's a lovely chap. He's a lovely old guy. I would love to have a drama with Gills. And I suppose I do in my head quite a lot, sit there chatting to Gills. But yeah, Gills, some chapters from his point of view. There's chapters from the point of view of Ewan Hunter, who's he's a gillie on the estate, and he's a young guy, and he comes under a lot of suspicion for the murder. And he's a really kind of troubled character. His father died. His father was also a gillie. And he was out deer stalking with him when he died the year before. So he's a really troubled kind of guy. And there's also chapters from the point of view of Ashley, who's Angus's wife. They were difficult to write because I was very conscious that she's the only female point of view that I'm going to, so that had to be good. You know, it had to be deep. You know, Ashley had a lot. Ashley went through a lot of changes. When the first Ashley Mark I was not anywhere near as deep and interesting as she is now. She was just a bit of a harlot, in the first one, but she's changed completely, and she's very much more serious now. She's kind of a campaigning kind of voice of the community type person. And in the second book, actually, she's going to be running for office as an MSP. So she's definitely developing as the book goes on, the series goes on. Really.
Did you have to make changes knowing that it was going to be a series? Did you know that it wasn't going to be a standalone when you first started?
I did. I did, because well, you'll know if I read this, that 3 is quite a frequent motif throughout this book. Like threefold death is mentioned, and 3 was very significant to the sort of pre-Christian pagan Celts. So I always thought this is going to be a trilogy. So that was always the plan, to write a trilogy. Although it could be more, I don't know. But yeah, I'm aiming for a trilogy.
And then after that, you could do more of that, or would you be interested in a standalone or a spin-off maybe with one of the characters?
Yeah, I've not thought too much about it, but yeah, I think that's it's kind of my wheelhouse. This sort of thing. It's this stuff that's based on history, culture. That's kind of the stuff that inspires me. So I'll probably continue writing that sort of stuff, I think, until I feel maybe sort of scrape the barrel. But no, actually, you can't scrape the barrel. There's so much of it. So yeah, I think I'll stay writing in this sort of this wee seam that I've got at the moment, because you have to write stuff that interests you, and this is the kind of stuff that interests me, and it's also the kind of the big questions. I mean, this book talks about faith, it talks about religion, all these sort of things. What's big questions? What's the meaning of life? These kind of things. So yeah, I'll probably continue doing that. But yes, a standalone. I'm open to writing standalones. But I would kind of like to try one without any sort of supernatural element in it as well, and see how that goes. But at the moment, yeah, my head's just on the second book at the moment, and then working out what I'm going to do with the third, because there's plot lines that I knew were going to run across books. For instance, Angus's. This isn't really giving much away. This isn't really a spoiler to say that Angus's mother was murdered when he was 8, and this was the incident that triggered his second sight. He saw his mother being murdered before it happened. So across the book, we're going to dig into that a bit more, and that will come to a conclusion at some point.
It must be tricky, I always think, to have the character arc, knowing that you have to put some elements across all 3 books, or that you're going to start. They're off camera, whoever it is. Hello, they're not on camera. You're good. Occasionally, we do have people walk into the room, realise they're on camera, and then slowly back out like we can't see them. So they've been saved from that.
Yeah, there was that great video. Was it last year? The guy was getting interviewed on Newsnight or whatever, and his child came in the wee rolly thing. That was brilliant. No,
is this the one where his wife kind of crawled in, not realising she was on camera, trying to get the child out? Yeah.
No, that was my father-in-law. It's funny. I'm in the dining room here, and he keeps his brandy in this room. So that was the reason for it.
Good place to keep the brandy. What kind of brandy are we having?
He's got Hennessy. He's got the
nice,
good
stuff. Nice and smooth.
Yeah.
Nice kick to it as well.
He gets it delivered in bulk.
It's not a bad idea, that.
Yeah, no, he likes it. He doesn't drink much, but he does like a wee Hennessy off an evening.
Absolutely, why on earth not? Sarah wants to know which area of Scotland is where you hope to write. So you are planning on staying in Scotland for the foreseeable future with your books?
Yes. So the first book it's actually set in a fictional village called Glenruadh. For a lot of the time, it wasn't fictional at all. It was actually Glenruadh, so I've just added an R. Glenruadh's a really nice wee village in the West Highlands. It's quite well known in sort of traditional music circles. It's got a really nice village hall, and there's quite often, ceilidhs and stuff there. So yeah, but I decided to make it fictional just because I wanted there to be more stuff there. I didn't want people saying, "Well, that you can't say that. That's there's not a bookshop in Glenruadh, so it's nonsense." And also there's a larger town called Silvaig, which is based in Malig. But I wanted Silvaig to be a little bit bigger. I want to have a university. I want to have it just made sense. So they're not going back and forward across the country.
Yeah.
So maybe maybe it's cheating a little bit, but I thought I could get away with it.
I think
Yes,
it's okay to do that. I think having that element of a real place, but then other bits in there as well to give you more to work with. And we do need to talk about the bookshop.
yeah, the bookshop, Lackey's bookshop. Yes, that's that's kind of
I could honestly feel myself as though I was walking in there and picture it all and kind of feel it all closing in, but in a nice way. You
yeah,
know, that kind of safe feeling when you're in a bookshop and the shelves are this big, you know, there's this
yeah,
much space and you're squeezing through. And I think
absolutely.
you describe it as a place where they never had more than two customers anyway, but you'd do a waltz to pass people.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
right.
it really made me smile. And I feel like I can smell the place, even with the smoke. I feel like I can smell the books and
I'm glad
the
because
air. And it was just such a wonderful feeling to read about it.
it's actually it's good. My memories of those sort of bookshops are ones in Glasgow. There's a few really lovely bookshops like that.
Mm.
One called Voltaire and Rousseau rather, in Ortega Lane, and that's just like that. It's like books everywhere, just sort of piled up. So yeah, I'd spend quite a lot of time there when I was in Glasgow, just sort of browsing the shelves and whittling away a few hours.
Kind of feels like my office a little bit. I have
Yeah,
piles
well,
of books everywhere. I need more shelves.
you're on your way to sort of a bookshop there.
I definitely own enough books to be classed as a library. I am there, definitely. I think it's 1,000 books you need to have. I definitely own more than 1,000 physical books.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I moved to Northern Ireland from Glasgow 10 years ago, and I actually donated a lot of my books to the charity shops. I wish I hadn't now because I think it would have a nice a nice library by now. But I
Tricky
suppose
though, they're expensive to move, aren't they? And they're expensive to replace.
yeah, we didn't have that much space in the van, so yeah. But I'm building up a new collection, so it's not to worry.
I know, I do need to have a little sort out, but the idea gives me hives.
Yeah,
I'm not tight. If I've enjoyed a book, I will buy copies for people, but I don't like lending my own books out.
yeah, and that's
So
been.
I can't get rid of them.
I've only recently started getting books that have been signed by authors, so I'm kind of protective of those ones. Generally, I wouldn't really be too bothered, but I've managed. Like I was at Bloody Scotland launch, and so last month I think it was, and that's where I got the Ambrose Parry book, and
Yeah, it was sometime in June,
yeah, yeah, it was
middle of June.
yeah, yeah, it was in Stirling, and it was the middle of June, and it was yeah, it was a good experience, and I got to meet. Oh yeah, I don't know if your viewers or listeners know, but it's, Unforgiven Dead is one of 5 shortlisted for the Bloody Scotland debut award. I think I mentioned that in my wee blurb at the start. But yeah, I got to meet all the other contestants, and that was lovely because they're
That
all
just must be an amazing feeling.
oh, it was so nice. I've read. Um, I've just got one more to read. I'm halfway through one of the other ones, and they're all brilliant books. So um, just been on
Yeah,
that
you
list.
don't make it easy for us, you authors. You don't make it easy for people to judge the books.
No, I have no idea how they do it. The
No.
judges, but fair play to them.
Yeah,
I would.
definitely.
I would.
Sorry.
No, you're.
So, have you read anything that you've really enjoyed recently? Because before we came on, I said how much I love this book. It's phenomenal. I said that I finished it, and the first thing I said was it was spectacular. You know, I just think it's a tremendous book. And I've just loved reading it. I won't sit here. I know I've already told you once, so I won't but I
No,
need everybody else to know.
I don't take compliments at all. I'm like, oh,
No, I don't know a single author who does yet. There's bound to be some that take compliments really
yeah.
well.
They just go, yeah, well, that's to be expected. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I've read some great books because I've been trying to read through the McIlvanney long list as well.
Yeah.
So I've read a lot of them on that. I just finished Mark Leggett's Penitent, which is set in
I've
Edinburgh.
not read that, but I love Mark Leggett.
Yeah, oh, it was really good. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting protagonist. Sort of, yeah, different from what you would think. I quite like characters like Liz Nugent's Sally Diamond, Strange
I've
Case.
got it. I've not had a chance to read it yet. Everyone's raving about it, and I've not had a chance to read it yet.
It's just these really sort of oddball characters. Um, I do like. I do. They stick in your mind afterwards, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I enjoyed that. I've just finished reading Cal McSorley's Squeaky Clean, which I've got here behind me. I'm going to show you it as well. It's such a cool cover. So he's actually on the long list for the McIlvanney Prize and on the short list for the debut. And this his book's set in Glasgow, and it's got a protagonist who works in a car wash, and he gets involved in all sorts of gangland stuff. And it took me ages because I looked at this cover and was thinking, and then I realised that's like a squeegee, like that's like somebody washing a car. You can see his wee hand there. It took me ages. Yeah, that was a great book as well. Really funny, and warm, and just a lovely book. I mean, not lovely is maybe not the right word. There's some quite quite bits as well, but no, just really well written. Really enjoyed it, and he's a great guy. Cal McSorley, met him at the launch as well.
I've not met him, not spoken, but I do follow his Facebook page, and we follow each other on Twitter. So you do I do think that is brilliant about prizes, and these big festivals, is how many other authors we're being I was going to say exposed to. That's a bit wrong. We're learning about so many other authors, so many books. I love books set in Scotland. And you find more and more Scottish authors. The more you get into one author, they recommend other people. You get recommended books that are, if you like this guy, you're going to like this.
Yeah.
And there's no possible way to keep up with it all.
Well, that's something you sometimes get a bit worried about when you're right. I have to read every single book here. I mean, I'm on a couple of panels at Bloody Scotland, so I'm just going to make sure I'm going to read all the stuff that the fellow panelists have written. So I'll definitely do that. But yeah, you can. It's almost like pushing drugs, isn't it? Like I was at a talk in No Alibis bookshop in Belfast recently. It's an institution in Belfast, No Alibis, and it was Steve Kavanagh and Brian McGilloway. I've got more of his books there. They're brilliant.
I'm gonna, just because you've mentioned it, I've got a really, really lovely copy. The Empty Room was one of my favourite books. It must have been last year, and it's a really lovely signed copy with sprayed edges.
We can play Snap. I've got it as well. It's different front cover, was it?
So,
but yeah.
So I've got really nice sprayed edges, and it's signed. I can't show you because you can't see it, but it's a signed numbered special edition with the spreadges.
Yeah.
I've never said spreadges before, but it has got gorgeous sprayed edges. So yeah. I've been wanting to show that off and not had a chance to. So there you go. I've been able to show it now. That's from Goldsborough Books in London.
Oh, it's brilliant. Brian McGill was lovely.
He's a lovely man.
He was speaking to David Torrance, is the owner of No Alibis bookshop, and he's saying he's like a drug pusher. Like, go in there and he'll like that picture. You like this? How about a bit of this? So I do like, your money's gone.
You do when you were saying that, then I've got this just shows how my brain works. Got the image of a man with a long trench coat with opens it in his books to buy.
Want to watch and do you want a book as well? Yeah.
So I know you said you think you've done about 3 of these interviews, the online ones. What things have you done in person so far, and what have you got coming up alongside Bloody Scotland? Have you got other things planned?
I've done a few newspaper.
And are you going to Harrogate? Somebody's asked.
I'm not going to Harrogate. It's quite tricky to get across for all these different festivals. So I've got Bloody Scotland. I was at I Write in Glasgow. When was that? Was that April? That was my first panel. Was at I Write. That was along with Neil Lancaster. I'm sure a lot of viewers here know the Max Craigie series. Really good series.
Yeah, we love Neil and Max Craigie.
Yeah, brilliant. So I was on that panel with him and Carol Johnston, who wrote Mirrorland and The Black House.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, so I was kind of, we're very different there. So I was kind of in the middle. Like Neil's more procedural, Carol's is more literary, maybe sort of. And it is set in Lewis, The Black House, anyway. And it's an excellent book. Book. Similar, some sort of parallels to my own, but yeah, a little bit different as well. So that was my first panel, and it was with the host was Jackie Collins, who's involved with Newcastle Noir, and she's brilliant. So she made me feel really at ease. So yeah, it was a really nice experience actually.
I have heard that about Jackie, that she's very good at putting people at ease.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah,
We've
yeah,
never actually met or spoken yet. We kind of comments on posts and things, but it will be actually nice to meet her in person one day.
yeah. No, that was a yeah. She made it really easy for my first panel. I was grateful for that.
And what about? Sorry, you went to say something there.
No, I was just going to say that's the only panel I've done so far, and then I've got 2 at Bloody Scotland. I think I have a podcast coming up as well in August. So I haven't really got much planned for the actual the launch date. So it's, the book comes out on July the 27th. So I haven't
Getting
got a launch
close.
party, or I know it's only 10 days, so I haven't got a big launch party or anything organised. I'd quite like to do something back in Scotland in my hometown of Fort William. Fort William's got a really nice bookshop, the Highland Bookshop. So I might try and get back there at some point and do something there. Fort William's also the hometown of I know a lot of you the UK Book Club like JD Kirk as well.
He has lots and lots and lots of fans.
Yeah, he grew up like 200 yards away from me in the wee Highland village of Cool.
Wow.
So yeah,
small world.
It is, and yeah, it's just strange because he's an absolute Barry Hutchinson. That's his real name. His pen name's JD Kirk. He's an absolute machine. He seems to produce like 10 books a year, and I've like produced 1 in 10. So he makes me feel a little bit inferior, to be honest. But no, he's a great guy and very funny. And his books are pretty awesome, you know.
Yeah, he gets a lot of mentions in the group. Hoon gets a lot of mentions in the group. We've had him on for interviews and panels, always really popular. And yeah, he's really funny.
He's very funny, yeah. I think it's the humour that I like books with lots of humour in them. So I like lots of Stuart McBride, JD Kirk as well. Any book that's not got any sort of laugh in it, I'm a bit like, I'm not sure about this. I've made sure that in Unforgiven Dead, although it sounds quite, I know it does sound quite bleak when I'm describing it to people. You've got this sort of tortured protagonist, and you've got threefold death.
It does, but it isn't.
Yeah,
you know, there is obviously there are things that are bleak, but the book in itself doesn't leave you with a bleak feeling.
No, I like to think there's a balance there. There's not too much dark. I mean,
I'd have to say there definitely is, because I'm not a big fan of bleak, even if the book's brilliant. I like books to leave me with a certain feeling, that's a nice, easy thing for you all to do, isn't it? You all need to leave Sam with a certain feeling when you finish writing your book. Good luck with that. But no, definitely wasn't a bleak thing. Me and Kaz, who is my partner in crime, she is the boss of the author chats. We always chuckle that she really loves a bleak book, and I'm always a bit kind of, sometimes there needs to be a bleakness, and that's fine. But if the book's bleak, I find it really difficult.
Yeah.
So no, definitely, I would not call this a bleak book.
No. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of that's to do with the influence that I had before I started writing. It's like Christopher Brookmyre is full of humour in his books as well, and like say Stuart McBride, people like that. I suppose probably my favourite sort of author when I was growing up was Ian Banks. I don't know if you've read much Ian Banks.
I've not. However, I've got Ian Banks and I've got his sci-fi stuff as well. So I've got Ian Banks and Ian M. Banks on my shelf to read. But when? That's the thing.
No, I would. Yeah, you have to read Ian Banks. He's just so good. I was. I think I read The Crow Road was probably the first book I read by Ian Banks.
Right.
And that was when I was around about 16 or 17. And prior to that, I'd read, but I was kind of not really sure I liked reading, but I read Crow Road and I was like, that was the book that really sort of opened the floodgates. And I was like, actually, this reading malarkey is actually pretty good. So yeah, The Crow Road was a big influence in my sort of teenage years.
I always think that's a really tricky thing, because we talk about, inspirations. When did you start reading? When did you start writing? I remember I've always been kind of writing something. But reading, I know I've always read, but I really don't know when it went from kind of other books to crime. I mean, I know I always read kind of Nancy Drew, and I had different, choose your own adventure books, and lots and lots of different things. But I don't know at what point I thought, do you know what, crime, that's really the one, that's really
Yeah,
the genre for me in
yeah.
all of its forms. I always think it's really interesting when you can all remember, pinpoint these things, and it just doesn't come that easily for me.
No, well, that was only because, like I say, I didn't really read that much before then. I played a lot of sport and living in the Highlands. I was always outdoors, mucking around, going fishing or playing golf or something. So I was very.
Yeah,
I didn't read much until, like, say, that book, and then I thought, yeah. And
yeah,
a few years later, I'm applying for university and I'm studying Scottish literature. So yeah, I had a big impact. But in terms of crime, yeah, I don't really know why I was drawn to crime either. I think it was maybe Ian Rankin's really his sort of work that I started reading first, um, and Val McDermid and people like that. Um, but I read a lot of stuff that's not crime as well. I don't know. I'm not really too bothered about genres. If it's a good character, it's a good character. So yeah.
yeah. I am trying to kind of fit other books in between, but we like to try and read at least one book by each author that we interview. So it's really tricky to kind of fit anything else in around family and a day job. But I
Yeah.
have been managing to. I was reading. It's literally behind me. Tuesdays with Maury, which is this one. This is the 20-year anniversary edition by Mitch Albom. Mitch
Ah,
Albom's one of my favourite authors. Definitely not crime. This is him and his mentor towards the end of his mentor's life. They reconnect. So it's I love it. Absolutely love it. And I kind of heard about it in kind of American TV shows and always been a bit, oh, I wonder what that is. And then one day ordered it. But recently I actually finished reading it and I put it down about 18 months ago because I've been so busy. And then one weekend, a few weeks ago, I thought, right, that's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing today. I'm actually going to sit and read this thing that I really want to read while I've got a bit of time. And it's gorgeous. So for anyone who wants something a bit different, Tuesdays with Maury. There is a movie as well that I'm going to watch, but I think I want to read the book one more time first.
yeah, no, that's a good tip. I'll try and pick that up.
So yeah, his books are just lovely. Um, what about, so you mentioned TV earlier that you've been working on the script. And so 6 parts, I think 6 parts is a brilliant idea for this because I think you would have to lose too much to fit it into a movie.
Yeah, yeah. There's a kind of circuitous story to that. It was pandemic. We didn't really know what was going to happen with the book.
Yeah,
Inkshire is an American publisher, and Barnes and Nobles were closed, and that's where they sold most of the books. So
yeah,
he thought, right, well, let's start working on this series. And during working the series, we just sort of stuck in loads more really good source material and plot lines and stuff. And I just thought, I'm going to have to feed this back into the book, haven't I? So that meant a whole new redraft. And it was good in a way because generally speaking, your book would be out first, then you would be adapting it for TV. And if you did strike any good stuff, you would have to leave it out. But I managed to get a lot of the good stuff back in. But the series there's all sorts of different plot lines, so it doesn't exactly follow the book. There's different characters, different plot lines, and it's quite detailed. I'm pretty proud of the pilot actually, and it's called a Bible you have to produce for these sort of things, where you discuss the tone of the show and
yeah.
even go as deep as what sort of music you would think would be suitable for it. Then you have really quite detailed outlines of what's happening each episode. So yeah, it's all kind of ready to go. It's funny because TV's really tricky. Sometimes you think, oh, this sounds really positive here, and then it doesn't come to anything. So I'm not going to got my fingers crossed, but I'm not going to really bank on it or anything like that. We'll wait and see. But like I say, Inkshire is a great company for that. They've got lots of contacts within that sort of industry. And the editor and the CEO are really keen to adapt these sort of things and not just adapt them using other writers. They're very keen to get the actual authors to adapt them themselves. So that's
Which
good.
is quite a rare thing, actually, from what I've heard.
I think so. I mean, even like Rankin, his Rebus novels, I don't think he writes them. pretty sure he doesn't write the episodes. He sort of sells the rights and someone else would write them. I think that's kind of generally what happens. Yeah, I think it's quite unusual for the author themselves to adapt it for TV.
I know that Mike Craven is, he told us in an interview a few weeks ago that he's getting to write one episode, but he wasn't allowed to write the first episode. Don't think he was allowed to write the last. There were kind of certain things, but he managed to be able to write one episode of his upcoming show.
Yeah,
and we've not got loads more details than that at the minute, but yeah, I think it is quite a rare thing.
Yeah, I think they want to have someone with a track record sort of there to hold your hand. I think that they're just worried that you're untried and untested. So yeah, I think they want someone who's done it, been there, done it, to really be on board as well.
And was that helpful for you, having somebody there to kind of guide you along?
Oh no, but I say that's.
Or is that not what's happened?
I didn't know that yet, but
Nobody holding your hand yet.
There has been talk about that. If we were to make this, in some of the discussions, said, well, yeah, you could do this, but you probably need to have a writer working with you at the same time, kind of thing. Yeah, and I think it's just a way for the production company or TV company to make sure that they're not throwing away money on someone who might not be able to write it.
Yeah. One of the things that we mentioned earlier on was the forward. I'm really going to regret taking. I'm not going. We're almost done though, so I don't need to put the book back up, which is good because I will knock it over because I'm a moron. I'm really clumsy. Oh no, I'm really clumsy. Anyone watching will be waiting. They're always waiting for me to knock something over. There was a part where you'd said that that you quoted Val McDermid saying, I should have stuck a post-it note on the bit, shouldn't I? But basically that it used to be kind of here we go. As recently as the 60s, the genre was virtually non-existent when we're talking about tartan noir and the remarkable rise of tartan noir, which is the 2018 piece that you've quoted Val from.
Yes, yeah.
And to come so far in such a short time, to have all of these different characters, different areas of Scotland being used, and not in a kind of a caricature kind of way, real kind of people, it feels like, arising from the pages. And even though you've kind of loosely based The Unforgiven Dead on one area and added other bits to it, there's still so much realness because everywhere that you've added, it might not really be in that place, but it's based on a real place.
Yeah.
And so much depth and so much, when you said texture, but yeah, that's a really good word for it. The texture and the depth of writing Scotland and Scottish people into a book, and how we were saying there's so much that you can do with it. There must be some things though that you kind of want to avoid, so that you're not kind of having something quite flimsy. You want this realness.
No, absolutely, and especially because I'm setting this in the Highland where I was sort of born and brought up. I felt a bit of a duty to really not make it seem like a caricature, to not present this sort of kilts and bagpipes, tartan shortbread sort of image. So I was very conscious not to do that. But in many ways, it's a kind of love letter to the Highlands as well. I think there's something different from if you're writing about a place where you were born and brought up. You've got a really sort of intense relationship with it, and hopefully that kind of bleeds through onto the page. I don't know. I've not tried writing about say somewhere where I've never lived before. I've not lived in Barra, which is where my next book set. So I'm slightly worried that I'm not going to quite nail that enough. But I think that also comes down to research and visiting the place. So I've been to Barra a few times, and so I'm just going to try and really immerse myself in that sort of area. But then I think there's a confidence thing there as well. I don't know who it was. I remember another panel I was watching, and you talk about writing about what you know to start with. Maybe for the first few books you would write about what you know, but then after a while, when you get more confident, you become quite frankly a better writer. You can go anywhere. You can say, I'm going to set this in, I don't know, a Caribbean island or whatever, or outer space.
Yeah, anywhere you want. I've not shown this before, but I am going to show you my Highland cutie that Patsy Forsyth brought me when we had our event in Leeds.
Oh,
She brought
fantastic.
this for one of my children, but I've got 4, so I've kept him myself because how do you choose which one? So Patsy, hello, and thank you.
What's he or she called?
I haven't got that far yet. It just says Baby Coo
Baby
on the
Q.
side. Yeah,
Baby Q's all right.
maybe Hercules.
Please.
Sorry, or Barry.
Well, there's two
Sorry, that
Highland
wasn't very flattering. I apologise.
there's 2 Highland cows in the Unforgiven Dead called Agnes and Muriel, so feel free to steal one of their names.
Oh, you feel like an Agnes. Okay. Agnes, not a Muriel.
Agnes the Q.
Yeah, Agnes the Key.
That works.
There we go. Okay. So you have now named Agnes. I'm going to write that down.
Brilliant.
And I'm going to give her a little thing around her neck.
I'm honoured.
So you've now gendered and named my cow. We're at 8 o'clock. I can't believe that. It's gone really, really quickly.
It has, hasn't it? Yeah.
It has. Thank you to everyone who's watched and asked questions and commented. And thank you so much for joining us, Fulton.
No, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, actually.
Do you want to give us a little recap of The Unforgiven Dead?
A recap, right. So The Unforgiven Dead is a grounded supernatural thriller set in the Highlands of Scotland. It follows the story of Angus Dew McNeil, who is cursed with second sight. I was going to say it in Gaelic there, but I've actually forgotten how you say it. It's the Shalnach, I think it is. So he's cursed with second sight, and he's had to bear this since he witnessed his mother's murder before it happened when he was 10 years old. When we meet Angus, he's in denial about this gift. And throughout the course of the novel, he has to learn how to embrace it or watch more murders unfold. That was it, the short version.
And thank you so much. I really look forward to, I hope we get to meet at some point at one of the festivals.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I look forward to the next book. And this one isn't even out yet, technically.
10 days. Yeah.
Proper so count. We can expect to see you on social media on the 27th.
Yeah, I'll be all over social media. I'll be tweeting and whatnot. So yeah, I'll be doing as much as I can.
Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to the next book, and best of luck with this one on publication day.
Thanks very much, Sam. It's been lovely talking to you.